Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is Alan. Things are rough out there. Don't believe the job report numbers. Less and less people are able to find jobs that either challenge them or fulfill their financial satisfaction. More and more people are just giving up and leaving the workforce or working part-time jobs. Gone are the days of a solid 9 to 5 with a guaranteed track to retirement in your 60s and an accidental death in the Dominican Republic when you're poisoned by your minibar. This is mainly due to two things, automation and dolphins, two things we routinely talk about and warn you against on this channel. But instead of just explaining what's wrong with the world, we're going to take it one step further and offer you guys some employment options that are absolutely terrible. Here are the 10 worst sci-fi armies that you can enlist in. Necromongers are from the highly underrated Riddick series. When religion and the military are mixed together, things usually get pretty complicated. Massive amounts of people die, and a bunch of people are really disappointed that there are no virgins waiting for them in heaven, as they are being sodomized with a pineapple in hell alongside Hitler in a maid outfit. This is not some kind of political statement, I'm just reporting the facts. Never met God, but I'm sure he doesn't want us running around and marking each other. Pretty sure he created tigers and bears for that kind of nonsense. No, but seriously, China, stop making these dangerous animals even faster by teaching them how to ride things. What the hell, man? Anyway, the Necromongers are a bit different from most religious fanatics. Well, not really, they're just a fancy space death cult. They believe that life is opposed to the natural order of the universe or something like that, and everything needs to be killed so that they can transition to the underverse. Which is like the Spider-Verse, except that it's not. It's kind of like goth heaven, and it's just terrible, apparently. We don't really know much about it, but what we do know is that the conversion process for becoming a necromonger is like turning into a goth. They stick spikes into you, which is all a part of a purification process, where the pigmentation in your skin and eyes are drained and you become emotionally and physically numb. Which is why in battle they kind of just stand in lines, don't take cover, and catch projectiles with their face. It's a really terrible organization to be in because the end goal is death. Also, there's a chaotic you keep what you kill philosophy behind the organization, which means you inherit the titles and properties of whoever you kill, which just really encourages constant murdering. The Survey Corps are from the Attack on Titan series. Now we know that no one does dying better than Japanese anime. It's the only genre that can get away with dragging out a character's death into a 3-episode arc. It's a genre that is masterful at displaying terrible things in a very beautiful and strange way. Attack on Titan is no different. In the future, the Earth lays in ruins because of a mysterious race of unstoppable titans that love eating humans. They don't need to eat us, they just like to do it. Where remains of humanity ends up holding up in a strangely Bavarian-looking medieval city with gigantic walls. These walls are defended by a military, which is separated into 3 branches: the military police, garrison, and Survey Corps. While the first 2 organizations are relatively normal and hide behind the wall, the Survey Corps actually has to venture beyond the walls and attempt to reclaim the land from the Titans, which is not only suicidal, but basically impossible. Even the smallest Titans are extremely difficult to take down because they're at least 9 feet tall and impervious to most firearms and weapons, and can quickly regenerate if they are damaged. The only way you can really kill them is by destroying a weak spot in the back of their necks. And because this is a Japanese anime, killing these beasts is overly complicated, but admittedly very cool to look at. The Survey Corps uses a very complicated grapple device known as vertical maneuvering equipment to reach the back of the Titan's neck, where then they dispatch the Titan with dual-wielded swords that kind of snap off like X-Acto knives when they become dull. A+ for creativity and originality. But holy crap, this is unnecessarily difficult and dangerous. The thing is, once you commit with the vertical maneuvering equipment, you're basically on a one-way zip line towards your death. And while the Titans aren't the most agile things in the world, they're oftentimes smart enough to move their mouths into the pathway of a flying Survey Corps soldiers. So always expect heavy, gruesome casualties where people are literally ripped in half by giant sets of teeth. And that's only the best case scenario when there are things to grapple onto, because some of these Titans can be as tall as 100 feet. In open spaces, the Survey Corps have to rely on freaking horses to move around, and they actually have to grapple onto the actual Titans themselves to get a kill. I love humanity and everything, and I'm willing to do my part, but I am going to join the military police brigade and stay behind the wall. The Imperial Guardsmen from Warhammer 40k. We've done a lot of videos about Warhammer 40k, so if you're a subscriber, you already know probably most of what I'm about to say. Whether it's world-devouring, continuously spawning Tyranids, Ben talked about in our last episode, or the orcs who literally pop out of spores and use their belief to power their war machines, or the undead cybernetic Necrons, or the depraved and terrifyingly efficient Eldar, or the endless chaos legions, the Imperial Guardsmen are literally the weakest combatants in the galaxy and comically under-equipped and trained for their job. Imperial Guardsmen are basically sandbags put in place by the Emperor to stop the horrible flow of Xeno invaders. In a best case scenario, if you're a Guardsman, you're still going to be fighting the Tau, who still are going to be equipped with advanced armor and weapons, while you sit in a dirty trench with your puny lasgun, which is more like a laser pointer than a blaster. But perhaps the worst part of being an Imperial Guardsman is that there's no hope. There's no last battle that will ensure victory and retirement and peace. Instead, the humans of Warhammer 40k universe are barely able to keep their head above water. Warfare is a constant thing. And you as an Imperial Guardsman are completely dispensable and have no future. The UDF, or United Defense Forces from the film Edge of Tomorrow. Formed during the Mimic alien invasion, it's the best humanity has to offer, and it's just not enough. Because no matter what we do, the Mimics already have seen what will happen in the future. That's because whenever an Alpha Mimic dies in combat, they revert back to the past and are able to report what happens to an Omega Mimic, which is kind of like a hive mind brain thingy for an invasion. So it doesn't really matter what you do, how great your training or strategy is, the Mimics will always know your next move before you even do. Unless you're Tom Cruise and protected by the powers of Scientology. The average UDF soldier, even with a kick-ass combat jacket, really stands no chance against a Mimic drone. They're just way too fast for us, have explosive projectiles, and are very sharp. I mean, the combat jacket doesn't even have armor on them. It's more like a cage that does enhance your mobility and carry your weapons, but you will ultimately die in it. The Suicide Squad we'll be talking about is from the DC Extended Universe. A huge missed opportunity, but an interesting premise. The cool thing about being in the Suicide Squad is that you are a superhuman. Some might call you a villain, but that's kind of a subjective term. One man's villain is another man's comic relief. The man who could climb anything could not climb out of this terrible plot. No, but seriously, not only was the Suicide Squad sent on suicide missions, they also were implanted with nanobombs in their necks, so if they disobeyed any order or tried to run away, or if their military intelligence advisor that was embedded with them gets killed, their heads get blown up. And in the best case scenario, you survive whatever supernatural threat you're fighting and make it to the end of the mission, you're still going back into prison because you most likely checked in for multiple life sentences. I lied. The best case scenario is that you have a standalone film in the DC universe, which is still kind of not that great. They don't have a good track record, but I do have my fingers crossed because I really do want to see a Captain Boomerang standalone film. I think that's the movie that will return DC back to form. The Mobile Infantry are from Starship Troopers, everyone's favorite fascist bug-fighting space marine organization. Any job that involves fighting bugs the size of cars is a terrible job. The Arachnids are no exception. But what makes the Mobile Infantry a terrible place to serve in is just the general lack of tactics, which oftentimes leads to horrendous death for everyone involved. I mean, why are we fighting these bugs on the ground where they can stab us to death? Sure, some versions of the Mobile Infantry had use of advanced exoskeletons and other cool gadgets, but the Mobile Infantry we see in the first movies just get ripped apart. And no amount of coet showers or voting privilege will make me actually want to enlist in such an organization. Look, you guys know I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I have an entire channel called Generation Tech devoted just to Star Wars, but I'll be the first one to admit none of the organizations in Star Wars are appealing at all to me. They actually are all terrible. Whether it's the Jedi or the Stormtroopers or the Ewoks. These are all terrible organizations to join. If you are ever stuck in the Star Wars galaxy, I recommend you just become a smuggler. It's probably your safest option. Now, there is one organization that is worse than all of the other ones, and that's being a clone in the clone army. There are a few reasons why this would suck more than becoming, for instance, a stormtrooper. For one, you're born into the job. You have no choice and no real future. So you're essentially a slave and are forced to fight a battle you probably don't understand and are brainwashed into fighting. If you get severely injured, it's easier just to kill you. If you try to go AWOL, they'll also try to kill you. If you try to warn the galaxy that someone has implanted a chip in your head that will turn you into a mindless drone, they will also kill you. And on top of that, if you somehow survive the Clone Wars and manage to escape from the Grand Army of the Republic, you still have no retirement plan or money stored away for your future. But that doesn't matter that much because in order to grow you faster, they modified your genes so that you age twice as quick as a normal human being. So good luck making it past your mid-30s. The Resistance is from the Matrix. Zion is not humanity's last bastion and hope. It's a terrible sewer kingdom of a defeated species. I mean, as much as I'd like to think that I would get the red pill, let's be honest, the blue pill is so much better and probably the option most of us would take if we actually sat down and thought about it rationally. Cypher was right. I mean, have you guys ever had a good steak? It tastes really good. Who the hell wants to live like savages underground in tiny metal containers wearing loose-fitting hipster homespun tunics? And when the machines finally do breach Zion, you basically have no chance of surviving. The Sentinels are incredibly hard to kill and come in endless numbers. They don't even have blasters or guns that would ensure a quick death. Instead, they have giant metal claws that will rip you apart. What the hell, man? I thought machines were supposed to be about efficiency. Even if you do get your hands on a sweet-ass APU, the thing is basically the convertible of armored suits, aka useless against giant metal claws. Knowledge is a curse, guys. Dumb people are really happy. Put me back in the float tank, please, so I can ride motorcycles around on a version of Earth that actually has sunlight still and trees. The next resistance we'll be talking about is from the Terminator universe. Look, if your organization is called the Resistance, that means your leaders don't even have enough energy to put some effort into the freaking name of the organization. I'm looking at you, Star Wars. Also, if you're in an organization called the Resistance, most likely there's going to be extremely high and gruesome casualties. Also, you'll probably have to live in a sewer. That's if the giant Terminator killing machines don't get you first. Because the enemy you're going to be facing will also be almost impossible to kill. Whether it's a T1 or the T800 or God forbid one of those shape-shifting infiltration models that will turn into someone you love so that you can't kill it, you really just don't have much of a chance unless you're special enough that people in the future care enough about you to send back a personal Arnold bodyguard for you. And again, like most post-apocalyptic futures, there's not really anything worth fighting for. If you do defeat the robots, what's next? How does one live in a nuclear wasteland? The Coalition of Order Governments, or COG, are from Gears of War. Imagine if the planet were actually hollow and full of bloodthirsty subterranean monsters. That's Gears of War. The underground monsters I was talking about are called the Locust, and they're not only endless and horrifying, they can also fire guns. And to make matters worse, you eventually find out that they're not actually invading the surface, they're being pushed out by a much more terrifying race of terrible things that are beneath them. As a COG soldier, your military was completely unprepared for an invasion from below, and just by looking at your weapons and gear, things seem very desperate. Let's be honest with ourselves, guys, you are completely screwed when your main battle rifle requires a chainsaw attachment on it. And even if you do manage to hold off a Locust offensive, they can just burrow beneath your city, collapse it with the riftworm, which means you'll have to venture underground eventually and fight them in the tunnels. And if you dig deep enough, you'll run into the Locust's real enemy. They're fighting a civil war against the Lambent Locusts. These are locusts who were overexposed to a toxic fuel source known as emulsion. This made the Lambent Locusts more aggressive, stronger, and they also explode when they die, which is really the last thing you want happening in an unstable underground mineshaft. So there you have it, guys. 10 organizations you probably want to look into if you're a masochist and just love terrible things. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. In our next episode, Ben will be continuing the 10 Flaw series with some other degenerate alien race. Anyway, guys, my name is Alan, reminding you that life is a movie, and you are the protagonist.